Permanent cashless welfare cards. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee, because I'd like to look at this article sent to me by a viewer discussing backlash after the Senate inquiry recommends expansion of the controversial cashless welfare card scheme. Looks like they're going to become permanent, and they may get expanded even more. Before we go through this article, let's look at some of the submissions that people made to the original Senate inquiry. So I've just randomly selected a few of the 172 submissions, and let's just read a little bit of it. So the Australian Hotel Association, WA submission. Social Services Legislation Amendment, the Cashless Debit Card Bill for 2017. The AHA welcomes the opportunity to make a submission. They're the peak body for tourism, hotels, yada, yada, yada. Our members understand, and here it is, that alcohol is a unique product regulated under the state liquor licensing laws that require businesses to balance the sale and supply of alcohol with the potential for public harm. Over the past 20 years, licensed businesses have worked with law enforcement, healthcare agencies, and the community introducing a range of measures to restrict or prohibit alcohol, focusing on regional and remote communities where alcohol and related issues are a significant issue. They're concerned that, well, this card is not going to will not allow you to spend on alcohol or to spend on tobacco. I doubt you could spend it on gambling either. I have to ring up and scare my mother to say, oh, they're going to give this to all pensioners now and no more tobacco. I hope she doesn't watch this before I make the joke. Measures adopted by licensed businesses include region-wide alcohol restrictions, more prohibitive restrictions on full-strength alcohol sales, and takeaway limits have demonstrated some improvement. However, the complexity of alcohol abuse has called for more targeted measures to be introduced that also address the means used to procure alcohol. Support for the cashless debit card. Andrew Forrest, creating parody report, supported industry and community concerns about the urgent need to take action to address alcohol and drug abuse. Communities, especially remote First Australian communities, are desperate to stop the incoming tide of drugs and alcohol, enabled by a unified welfare cash. The report recommended the introduction of a healthy welfare card, which was adopted for trial, quarantining 80% of benefits onto a bank card to prevent funds being used to purchase alcohol or gambling products at two sites, Ceduna, SA, and East Kimberley in WA. An independent evaluation of the trial in both locations found the CDC was associated with a reduction in all three targeted behaviours among CDC participants: alcohol consumption, illegal drug use, and gambling. The research found the following: 41% of drinkers on the card said they were drinking less. 48% of drug users on the card say they were using less drugs. 48% of gamblers on the card say they were gambling less. I mean, drinking, drug use, and gambling, these are not good things. And the question is, well, if you're receiving welfare, should the state set this up to limit your ability to do that? What if this was completely voluntary? And people who are struggling to overcome these vices can say, I want this, I want to volunteer for this, please restrict my ability to waste money on these things. That would have a completely different tone. Or maybe, what do you reckon? But it's not coming out like that, is it? It's being forced down. But it's interesting to see that a lot of remote communities want this to restrict alcohol, because there's a lot of problems there. I'd say all of these things here, the drugs, alcohol, and drinking, they're signs of other social issues in these areas. How many people have got nothing to do, so they turn to the booze or someone else? The finding indicates that the CDC shows some evidence of restricting the flow of cash to harmful use and redirecting it to pay for essentials. Outcomes have been encouraging and consistent with AHA's support for targeted solutions to intervene on alcohol abuse, and we submit our support for the proposed amendment to the legislation. And they've got some additional measures, and I'll let you go through that. Let's have a look at another submission here. This is a private submission, name withheld. Dear Sir, I'm writing to express my deepest concerns about the cashless welfare card and how it will affect me. I feel that as a person on disability support pension, this card will restrict my ability to not only be no longer able to pay my rent, I'll be prohibited from buying the normal day-to-day items I normally buy. I do not smoke or gamble. So this person was concerned that this is going to limit their ability to pay their rent, which I'm sure it wouldn't be, but also day-to-day purchases. Because the thing is, you can't take one of these to a, can you take it to a garage sale? How many people are going to accept credit card at a garage sale? What about second-hand stuff? Is this going to lock people out who are at the lowest echelons of society, the impoverished, from getting the cheapest bargains? Let's have a look. Let's jump at another one. So here's another one. Social Services Legislation Amendment. My name is such and such. I'm a 43-year-old single mother with a 10-year-old son who has ADHD, ODD. 7-year-old daughter, my 20-year-old stepdaughter living at home, and a 23-year-old stepson who is not. For the past 4 years, we've been dependent on income assistance in a couple of forms after I was diagnosed with severe arthritis in both my hips. I feel sorry for this lady right now. Quick, try a carnivore diet. It helps. I tried to push on, but when I started passing out at work and was contemplating suicide, I gave in and sought help. My condition deteriorated. See, this is the thing. A lot of people are so proud. You don't want to take welfare. And some people just don't have a choice. It's meant to be a safety net there to help people. I think some people are shocked at how hard it is to get, that it's not an emergency thing for you. You're not going to instantly get it when you lose your job. You've got to burn through all your savings too. Condition deteriorated, waited for 2 years for surgery. So I do not need help with my finances. There we go. Putting modesty aside, I'm a whiz at stretching the dollar. It helps that the 10 years before my world fell apart, I worked in the finance industry. For the years before that, I worked in administration, and before that as a journalist. I ensure my children and I do not miss out on anything. All my bills are paid. I had no debt bar a mortgage and structured my pension to create $4,000 per year in savings, interest, and reward points. This cannot be achieved through restricting financial flexibility. Quite the opposite. It's only financial flexibility which makes existence possible. There's a very good point. There is a very good point that this woman sounds like she is maximizing the utility of the money that she's getting to get the best outcomes. And this type of thing will restrict your ability. But sadly, they're not going to listen to people like this because she's probably an isolated case. Because she's got a higher level of financial literacy than I'd say the average Aussie has. Paying half a bill this month and the other half next month, prioritizing a sports activity this week and the doctor next week, putting away the cents of your bank balance into a higher interest saver account for the day the car dies, using a rewards credit card for your spending without using the credit, mortgage offset, second-hand sales, markets, saving the annual bill amount weekly into a high interest earner. Individual methods can create enough so your child can have Christmas, birthday, or dental work. Not all families are capable of achieving this, however. It's an unsupported assumption that mismanagement is the sole reason families are falling short. The Cashless Debt Card Trial Evaluation report from August 2017 does not establish cause of poverty. Its goal were to evaluate the card. It does, however, present some interesting points. While PR spins the decrease in alcohol and gambling, the report shows that even though these activities have decreased, incidents of families unable to pay bills or afford essentials increased. The report shows on page 73 participants ran out of money for school needs. 55% in wave 2, up from 40% in wave 1. Well, there you go. Ran out of money to pay for essentials. 54% in wave 2, up from 40% in wave 1. Ran out of money to buy food. 52% in wave 2, up from 49% in wave 1. Ran out of money to pay bills. 35% in wave 2 and 32% in wave 1. Given 128 people had their restricted portion reduced to accommodate obligations, and the conspicuous absence of the number removed from the trial, more than half of participants' daily needs were not met, even with the cards. If the report proves the cards reduce undesirable spending habits, it also proves that spending on alcohol, drugs, or gambling was not the primary cause of their financial situation. I was blessed to be in a position I was before getting sick. Others were not so lucky, and their inability to manage has more to do with what they have to work with than rather than what they do. removing Section 124PF of the Social Securities Administration Act, which limits the number of locations, participants, and end dates of the trial. So, I mean, there you go. And I'll let you go through this one on your own, but she raises some very good points. And here we have another one. My name is such, I'm a constituent of such. I have grave concerns about the likely impact of the cashless debit card that the Social Securities legislation would extend, because I see this as a step towards totalitarianism and the loss of our financial freedoms. I wonder if, because this was written I'm assuming a couple of years ago, I wonder what they think about 2020. Let's have another one. Let's have a look here. This is from the Australian Banking Association. What are they looking? Introductory comments. Cash. Let's see. Do they support it? The banking industry is pleased the federal government has taken on board our concerns regarding technical and practical issues with the debt card as originally contemplated. However, we remain concerned about their program and the potential adverse and unintended consequences for Indigenous customers and others in their communities, as well as the implications for other communities across Australia. So they're concerned. Let's jump another one. UNICEF Australia. What have they said? Yep, I don't want to know. International human rights laws and social protection. Parameters of the submission. Let's have a look here. Australia's obligation under international human rights laws are necessary considerations in shaping the policy and legislative approach to social protection. Human rights are universal and inalienable, indivisible, independent, and interrelated. All rights are equal in importance, and none can be fully enjoyed without the others, except in New South Wales when you're giving cash grants dependent on your gender, but there we go. Yeah. The interrelated and equal nature of human rights must be borne in mind when determining what policy and legislative measures are appropriate to help protect children and adults, and especially in the context of developing and implementing social protective measures. I'll let you go through this one on your own. We'll go here. Let's see what the CBA says. Thank you for the opportunity. It's committed to security and enhancing the financial well-being of people. Our submission outlines our involvement in the CDC review and our recommendations for the implementations based on our learnings. Okay, introduction. We'll skip through that. They're involved in it. Fantastic recommendations. Ensure appropriate wraparound services and continue to evaluate outcomes. Consider cultural and diversity of individual identified regions. Address the capabilities and behaviours. Invest in economic participation opportunities. The Commonwealth Bank looks forward to continuing to share its learnings with the government through the review of the CDC. We're encouraged the government to also engage with other organisations from the public, private and community sectors that are equally committed to creating health and economic participation outcome for vulnerable peoples. We have here another one. Please do not further roll out the healthy welfare card. Another one. To the Honourable Senators, I write today to speak about the above-mentioned bill and my reasons for standing against the bill. So maybe I just picked a whole bunch of ones, and I literally just randomly picked them, guys, that were against it, and everyone else was positive. But somehow, I don't think so. I think there's a bit of public support against this. I think there are a lot of people who are going to instinctively think, oh, fantastic, stop people from gambling, smoking away, and drinking away their money. That's great, the bludgers. But it's more complex than that, guys. It really is. A Senate committee has backed the federal government's push to make cashless welfare cards permanent. I mean, how would you feel if the government started paying your tax returns in a cashless card? What do you reckon? Just think about it like that, A parliamentary inquiry has backed an expansion of the controversial cashless debt card scheme, prompting renewed concerns from Labor, along with Indigenous human rights and legal groups. A Senate committee recommended on Tuesday a government bill which would see almost 25,000 welfare recipients in the Northern Territory and Cape York permanently moved onto the cards past Parliament. Recipients in South Australia's Kaduna region, the East Kimberley and Goldfields in Western Australia, and Bundaberg and Hervey Bay in Queensland have which also have significant Indigenous populations, would be lumped with the cards. The efficiency of the scheme, which moves 80% of someone's welfare payments to a debt card that prevents spending on drugs, gambling, products and alcohol, has now been the subject of 6 parliamentary inquiries. Critics have long argued the scheme is impractical, disproportionately affects Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islanders, and there is little evidence it is substantially beneficial. I mean, this is the problem, guys. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, the government throws so much money to try and bridge the gap. And I've learned about this all through my architectural education, particularly with housing. And we've even entered submissions with to redesign Indigenous housing, incorporate some of the cultural issues in there. And you'll go and talk to people and go, nah, they don't really give a crap about all that cultural stuff. They just want to make sure it's going to be robust, or we've got these other social issues. I mean, you got to think about it. Some of these remote communities, they're completely dependent on welfare, or they're completely dependent on royalties. You need, particularly for men, and this is going to be sexist here, men need to work. And that's coming with my own complete bias. You need something to identify with. You know, before the sit-down money rolled out, their communities were doing a lot better. You know, it's kind of sad. It really is. Considering it's a civilization that survived on a desert for a substantial long amount of time, because that's pretty much what Australia is, guys. Okay, we've got a slither of little green shit around along the coast, but other than that, it's a desert. It's a very hostile environment. So you've got to respect their culture for the ability to survive there. And the worst things we've done for Aboriginals are two things. One is welfare. Two is our diet. So on Monday, a University of South Australian Monash University study found the card had no statistically significant improvement in any behaviour in a South Australian area where the scheme was being trialled. Handing down the recommendation on Tuesday, committee chair Liberal Senator Wendy Askew wrote the inquiry was encouraged by reports from local communities the card was having a positive impact at trial sites. Importantly, reports of significant improvement in the welfare of children in various communities indicated that the program is achieving its objective of reducing hardship and deprivation. But in a dissenting report, Labor Senator Pat Dodson and Milarandria McCarthy said about 68% of people impacted by the bill are First Nation Australians, making it racially discriminatory, and that it went against the Closing the Gap agreement. It is not consistent with genuine partnership or with a First Nations controlled approach to service delivery, they wrote. Tuesday's recommendation also prompted renewed concerns from community groups. The government's attempt to ram this bill through Parliament is a slap in the face of Aboriginal organisations and peoples who will be overwhelmingly affected by the bill and rejected. The Change the Record co-chair Cheryl Axleby said. Amnesty International, Australia's Indigenous Rights Advisor Rodney Dillon, said affected communities have not been properly consulted about the bill. To extend the cashless welfare card trial without evidence that it works without proper consultation with community is at best paternalistic, at worst simply racist, he said. Well, no, I mean, here's the thing. Of course, SBS is going to harp on the racist aspect of it. It's going to Harvey Bay, guys, okay? There's a lot of white people there as well that are going to cop this, okay? Josephine Langbine, a senior lawyer at the Human Rights Law Centre, said the government should respect the rights of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to self-determination, reject the bill and transition away from blanket compulsory income control. The government has not committed to releasing data and analysis of the cards before the legislation passed, and Social Services Minister Annie Ruston told a Senate committee last month she had not read a draft review before the government began to push to make the scheme permanent. In a submission to the most recent Senate committees, Services Australia said the bill would provide certainty for cardholders and came after community leaders requested trials become an ongoing measure. So it sounds like there are issues in these everyone's aware of issues in these remote communities. I mean, that's not a contentious issue anymore. Probably is for YouTube, but Australians are aware there are issues in these remote communities. I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that there's no employment or opportunities in communities. They have all this concern about the children in these remote communities, and then what happens when you grow up? In the middle of nowhere, with no work. What's going to happen? Rather than all this money that they're throwing at all these programs and government initiatives and these type of things, maybe they need to look at ways to encourage business to thrive there, maybe to remove these socialist body corporate organizations that control all the land and allow the individuals to grow their land. Maybe we just need to throw out copies of Atlas Shrugged everywhere to them all there. How can you improve conditions? Maybe find a way to get tourism going or something happening. I mean, even all of the remote backburning that's being done. That's supporting remote communities as well. You know, and then they're selling the green credits to city hipsters. Why not? That's business. Needs to be something. Because I get the feeling in another decade, another 20 years, we'll be having the same discussions again and again. Because closing the gap hasn't worked. Still the same social issues. And it's kind of sad because, you know, the people that are meant to be helped are going to cop it. What do you think, guys? What are your opinions of this? How would you address some of these social issues in these communities? How could you encourage business to set up and take the risks in these parts of Australia? Is it even possible? Just imagine the red tape you'd have to put up with. Anyway, guys, like, share, subscribe to the channel. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. If you're a fan of the channel and want to support the content I create here, there are a few ways you can. You can join us on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us using our affiliate links at Amazon, eBay, Independent Reserve, or Kucoin. You can buy a merch from HeiseSays or the HeiseSays blog, or support us using Gold Pass or PayPal. Take care, everyone. I'll see you next time.